Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Yonid Arthur. I'm an audiologist and strength coach, and I specialize in vestibular disorders. Welcome to my channel, The Steady Coach. Today we're going to be tackling the topic of vestibular migraines. I know most of you are here on my channel because you have chronic dizziness, and vestibular migraine doesn't quite meet the same criteria as the symptoms that most of you have. But it is my belief that vestibular migraine is a form of neural circuit dizziness. It just takes a different form from those that we talk about a lot here on this channel, including PPPD, MdDS, chronic subjective dizziness, and other forms of chronic dizziness. And therefore, it is my belief and the belief of many of my colleagues that vestibular migraine can be treated using many of the same techniques that I use and suggest for other forms of neural circuit dizziness, even though they seem so different on the surface. So before I get started on this topic, I want to back up and just explain what a migraine is, because I've encountered many clients who have told me they have been diagnosed with vestibular migraine, but they still don't know what a migraine is. So a migraine is a complex biochemical change that occurs in the nervous system that then sets off a chain of other reactions in other parts of the body, typically the head or neck. So you can think of this like electrical and chemical dominoes. So something pushes that first domino down, and then this leads to a whole bunch of other reactions that eventually lead to pain and or other migraine symptoms. There is some dispute about what causes the pain of migraines and the other symptoms, but there's general agreement that there is some change in blood supply that can lead to spasms, either within the blood supply itself or within connective tissues, nerves, and muscles in other parts of the head or neck. And as part of this chain reaction, this leads to a similar domino effect in certain nerves of the head or neck that lead to the perception of pain in most cases. And I know some of you do not have pain with your migraines, but I'm going to be talking a lot about pain with migraines because it's going to illustrate many of my points here. So in other words, you can think of this as a chemical and electrical change that isn't coming from tissue damage or disease, and that's reversible. So it happens, it passes, and then things generally go back to normal. Now, for people who have vestibular migraine, or in other words, vestibular symptoms associated with their migraines, typically dizziness or vertigo, there are two main subtypes, and those subtypes are people who just have those symptoms with their migraines, and then there are other people who have what we call interstitial symptoms, in other words, dizziness between the attacks. As for the second type, that's clearly neural circuit dizziness. Something keeps the dizziness going even after the attack has stopped, and I think it's a pretty easy argument to make that the brain is stuck in some maladaptive circuit. In other words, it's stuck in some pattern or program that was established by the migraine. The first type is less clearly a neural circuit issue because it occurs in episodes, but I want to explain a little bit more about why I think that these two things are exactly the same and just result in different symptoms. So we've talked about this extensively before on other videos, and I'll refer you to my video on Malda-de-Barquement syndrome, which I'll link to above and below, for a full discussion of what I mean by biomedical bias. But in short, there's a huge bias in research toward biological causes of people's symptoms. Medical professionals are trained to find something wrong with you that explains your symptoms, and then treat you for the something that's wrong with you. Things that are wrong with you are much easier to diagnose when there's a physical abnormality, when there's a tumor, or when there's a growth, or when there's a cut. These things are also a lot easier to study because you can cut out the tumor or give someone a pill to shrink the growth and measure how quickly those symptoms go away. So the biological causes of migraines are a lot easier to investigate than the other causes, which are psychosocial. So migraine, like all of the other conditions I talk about on my channel, are always biopsychosocial, coming from the body, for example, the genes, for example, changes in hormones, and psychosocial, meaning related to your beliefs, your feelings, your thoughts, your social system, your support, and what's happened to you in your past. Those latter two things are much harder to study. So when scientists come up with models to explain certain diseases, they'll often treat those psychosocial causes as kind of a black box, again, because they're kind of hard to measure. So they might say something like stress, but stress is very hard to quantify and qualify for a study. And I'm going to link to a video above and below in which I talk about how complex stress is. So by the conventional medical model, the way migraines happen is this. Someone has some kind of biological inclination. In other words, someone has genes that tell his or her body to be sensitive to certain changes in the brain. Then goes the conventional model. There is some kind of biological trigger, or perhaps even a psychological or social trigger, which again, in medical literature is often described as stress. This leads to physical changes, the ones we talked about at the beginning of this video, and that leads to pain or other symptoms because of physical inflammation of the nerves or other structures in the head or neck. Nice and easy, cut and dry, right? Except that model kind of skips over why some people experience pain and some people don't. Some people experience dizziness and some people don't. Some people with the same genes have migraines and other people with the same genes don't. So how can that possibly be? Well, it could possibly be because psychosocial factors play a huge role in the development of migraine symptoms. And there's no body of literature in which this is better illustrated than literature on chronic pain. Now again, I know not all of you with migraines experience pain, but pain and dizziness, especially the chronic types, work in many of the same ways. So one of the best examples of this is that through normal aging, many people end up with abnormalities in their spines. Bulging discs, herniations, slipped discs. In fact, about half of people will have some kind of abnormality in their spine by the time they reach middle age. But only a small proportion of these people have chronic back pain. Why? Because physical abnormalities don't necessarily lead to pain. The brain has to interpret signals from the body as pain. When does that happen? That happens when the brain is expecting danger. The brain has to predict danger and want to alert you to something in order for something to be interpreted as pain. If the brain doesn't interpret a signal as dangerous, it's not going to alert you by making it hurt. So the nervous system has a huge influence on whether you have a migraine or not at two parts of this process. The first part is whether the electrical chemical process gets started in the first place. In other words, you might have that biological or genetic inclination or hormone drop or whatever that might make you vulnerable to a migraine. There's a point there at which your nervous system plays a role in whether you get a migraine or not. And then the second part is when your nervous system decides whether to interpret the physical changes going on in your head as the result of this electrical and chemical change as dizziness or pain or nothing. So what I mean by that second part is you can have electrical and chemical changes in your brain or in your body that your brain does not interpret as dizziness or pain. Again, going back to that illustrative example of people who have slipped discs. Most of those people will not have pain. So to put these in perspective, why do some of you develop migraines and some of you don't? And why do some of you who end up with the migraine process in the brain, the electrical chemical changes, develop dizziness and pain, and some of you don't? This is the mystery that science doesn't have a good answer for yet. But in my clinical experience, the missing piece that determines which way we're going to go at these points in the process is how sensitive your brain is to danger. In other words, how much stress is your brain under? How likely is it to revert into a fight or flight state and react with an alert, alarm, danger response? It's a really good idea to have a brain that is able to make good predictions. You want a brain that's sensitive enough to respond well to danger, but not so sensitive that it over-responds to danger. For example, if you live in a place with a lot of wild animals, when you hear a rustling in the bushes and it could very well be a tiger, it's a really good idea to have a brain that says, get out of there. But it's not a good idea if you're walking down a busy street where there aren't any tigers, to start expecting and predicting tigers on every street corner. That's going to really impede your ability to get down the road. So you want your nervous system to be somewhere in between. So for someone who's prone to migraines for biological reasons, your brain might be a little more prone to seeing tigers. But it's not necessarily going to be looking for tigers on every street corner unless it's in a hyper-alert state to begin with. And what puts our brain in a hyper-alert state? Stress. And again, you can watch my video on stress and chronic dizziness to understand what I mean by stress, because I don't just mean stress in your everyday life. Stress can be a lot more subtle than that. But ultimately, stress puts your body into this hyper alert or extra sensitive state. When it's in an extra sensitive state, it's much more likely to fall into that cascade of responses we see when someone has a migraine. So by doing things that can help balance your brain's response to stress, you can reduce the likelihood that your brain's gonna jump into that cycle, and you can reduce the likelihood that your brain is going to interpret any changes that do happen as pain or dizziness. Think about it this way. Have you ever seen a child fall at the playground? What happens when the parents run over right away and make it seem like a horrible catastrophe has happened? How does the kid react? Totally has more pain, right? And it's not just that the kid's reacting this way for attention. Studies on pain suggest that someone in that situation might actually feel more pain. Whereas what happens when the parents are like, oh, you're fine, just keep on playing. The kid's like, oh, I guess I'm okay, and keeps on going, right? So in other words, how sensitive we are to pain or other changes in our bodies that can lead to perceptions of things like dizziness is definitely affected by the context we're in, our thoughts, beliefs, and feelings. So in my experience, people with vestibular migraines can be effectively treated using the same techniques that I use for many other forms of neural circuit dizziness. Now, there are some differences. The main one is that with vestibular migraines, especially if you don't have a lot of movement, positional, or visual triggers between episodes, vestibular rehabilitation therapy isn't really gonna be a feature of your program. And by the way, I don't think it should be the main feature of most people's programs unless they have a lot of fear of movement or other triggers. If you do have vestibular migraines and you have those interstitial symptoms or PPPD, VRT may be helpful and help those symptoms. But for you, if you have vestibular migraine, the main feature of your program is going to be that stress reduction piece. And again, by stress reduction, I don't mean eliminating stress from your life. First of all, not possible, but also not desirable, because stress is actually the pathway to resilience. Stress is a good thing. What I'm talking about is addressing stress a little bit differently and developing greater awareness of how stress plays a role in your symptoms. For many people who have vestibular migraines, the main factors affecting the outcomes of their treatment, in my experience, is being able to address those emotional factors, which again, I talk about extensively in my video on stress, being able to recognize which personality traits might be adding to the pressure that leads to this state of a hyper-alert nervous system, and developing a better sense of how to meet one's own needs. I don't like using the term self-care because I feel that it's been hijacked by the alternative medicine and spa industries. But what I mean is true self-care, really understanding what your needs are, not just taking a bubble bath every now and then, but understanding what your needs are, how they're not being met, being aware of how it affects you when they're not met, having the courage to stand up for yourself when you need to, and having an outlet for feelings of resentment and anger that build up without needing to shove them down and have them build up as pressure inside. So if you have vestibular migraines and you've been looking at biological treatment like medications, I'm neither for nor against those kinds of treatments, because I don't think that anyone should have to suffer needlessly, and it's totally okay to explore those avenues of supplements and lifestyle changes. But I think that the missing piece in many of these treatment regimens is not dealing with the things that are getting your nervous system into this hyper-alert state in the first place. And I don't believe that you're doomed to that state just because of your genes. I myself have suffered from migraines my entire life, and I no longer have them. Maybe once in a while, if I don't handle my stress or I'm not talking about my feelings, because we're all human. So in my opinion, this critical piece is missing from most migraine management programs. If we're addressing the biological factors, but we're not addressing the psychosocial factors, we're not actually taking care of the cause or the things that actually lead the migraines to begin and cause pain and dizziness in the first place. If you're new to my channel, please check out some of my other videos. I go into so much depth about ways to do this, or you can take my Healing Chronic Dizziness course. It's completely free, and it's designed for anyone who has chronic dizziness symptoms, including people with vestibular migraine. For people with vestibular migraine, the way you would do the course is you would skip the part of the course that uses vestibular rehabilitation therapy exercises, which I talked about a few minutes ago, unless you have specific movement-related triggers that you want to work on. But believe me when I say this, many of my clients, even those who have PPPD and movement-related triggers, skip that part also, and they still get better by addressing the stress and emotional causes of their dizziness. I know this goes against some of the things that you've been told as someone who's been diagnosed with vestibular migraine, so I'm looking forward to your comments and questions below. If you enjoyed this video, if you liked it, please comment, share, and subscribe. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in. You guys are amazing, and I really appreciate your support here. All right, we'll talk to you soon.